Okay, let's talk about how to cure anxiety and depression in 5 minutes. So, whether you're new to the channel or you've been following for a while, you may have heard how I'll work with a person or maybe seen live me bring down a person's anxiety or bring down their depression just in talking to them 5, 10, 15 minutes. Now, of course, this is definitely rare. People have gone to their therapists for 10 years and not gotten their depression diminished as much as we're able to diminish it in just one session. But the way that we're able to do it is through using certain techniques, and I'm going to reveal to you the basic techniques so you can use it on yourself. You can also use it to help your friends, your family, whatever, however you want to use it in your life. If you're a coach or a therapist, you can utilize these same techniques. And basically, I'm going to show you the deeper process of what I'm doing and how I'm getting to the bottom of the issue. If the person's dealing with anxiety or they're dealing with depression, those emotions are very different, but they're both extreme. And extreme emotions come from extreme schemas. So schemas are thoughts and beliefs. It's like the way you tend to see things or the way you tend to think about things. So what it is, I'm actually looking for the extreme schema, the extreme thoughts or the extreme beliefs that they're entertaining or that they're holding on in their mind. These extreme beliefs usually come from childhood, from being raised by abusive people, from how they survived being neglected emotionally. They can come from a variety of places, but typically it came from a complex trauma from their childhood, meaning they were given trauma after trauma of not getting their emotional needs met in childhood, and so they developed core beliefs. And if it's a low self-esteem, then their core belief might be I'm unlovable. If it's anxiety, then it's I'm not safe with certain situations. With depression, it's I'm powerless. I don't have the ability to solve my problems. Whatever the case, wherever the schemas came from, it's all about identifying the extreme thoughts, the extreme schemas that are creating the extreme emotions. It's natural for us to have sadness if we're going through something that's commensurately sad, such as the death of a loved one. To grieve the death is not extreme. That's not an illness that needs to be treated. But if they're suffering from depression above and beyond the healthy grieving, then it's probably because the thinking has gone beyond just having healthy, true, correct thoughts around the issue. So when the thoughts go beyond, like, okay, my father has died, I love my father very much, I will miss him, all of those are healthy thoughts, all of those are real thoughts. They will lead to some sadness, but you're not going to be dealing with a mental illness with that type of thinking. When your thinking goes beyond that to now I'll never find my place in life, now I'll never know who I am, now my children are doomed. See how those thoughts are very extreme. So when you identify the extreme schemas, the extreme thoughts, you have to go in, and what I'm doing in my notes is I write down, okay, that thought seemed like it was a bit extreme. And you're going to go in and you're going to challenge those thoughts. So the work that I do, it's not just talk therapy where I'm allowing them to just talk to me. I'm actually going in and challenging those thoughts by just having a very calm discussion or argument about that schema that they have. And ultimately, I have to be able to convince them that they need to update their belief. And so what you're doing, if you're doing this for yourself, is finding the extreme thought, the extreme schema, and finding how you can update your belief to a more adult level way of thinking. So let's take, for example, you're having anxiety, and it's because your parents are coming over, but whenever your parents are over, they hog the conversation with all their political talk. So you're having this anxiety about the dinner that's coming up, First thing you need to do is stop, sit down, and jot. Jot, journaling organizes thoughts. Bam. Throw a line down the center of the page. Left hand side, you're going to write your subconscious schemas, the thoughts that you're having that are fueling the emotion. On the right hand side, then we're going to write the new updated beliefs. And it's that simple. You can sit down and do this. It could take 5 minutes and you'll bring your own anxiety down. Just like that, using the jot method. So how does this look? Okay, so you sit down and you're thinking, oh, what am I feeling this anxiety about? What's really driving it? And you remember, okay, it's my parents coming over. So you might jot that down, parents coming over. Okay, so why? Well, you're going to ask, you're looking for what's extreme about this. And since you haven't found it, you go deeper. You ask yourself, why is this so scary to me? Well, because my parents are difficult sometimes. Okay. Did you find anything extreme there? Not yet. Got to dig deeper. The extreme emotions come from extreme thoughts. Your emotional system is very, very efficient. It's giving you chemicals based on actual thoughts that you're having, things that it's actually perceiving. And when it perceives there's something that's going to violate your values, bam, it's going to send you adrenaline, cortisol, so you can protect yourself. Because yourself, your identity, is your values. Does that make sense? So in this situation, you got to find what is the extreme thought, what is the violation that I got to identify here. So to go deeper than my parents are difficult sometimes, I'm going to ask myself, okay, but why is that so scary? Why is this so important to you? What about the parents being difficult is really just driving this depression or this anxiety in this case? And then so you say, well, because my parents talk too much, and they hog the conversation with their political talk, and that's very uncomfortable for me because I don't believe in their political beliefs. Do you see where there's a violation of the self now that you've identified? Yes. So now you're actually viewing this, they're coming and they're talking too much, as being a violation of yourself. And that's where you have that extreme thought. It's basically, I'm not safe because my parents are coming to violate who I am and what I believe in. And so you might say, okay, well, what can I do? Why don't I just talk to them? Well, how can I fix the situation? And the reason you identify the reason you don't talk is because you're afraid to speak up to your parents. Again, you have an extreme thought. Why? Why am I afraid to speak to my parents? I'm a grown-up, right? That's extreme. That thought may come from childhood. Until you identify, as you keep going deeper, you say, well, I'm afraid because they're going to disown me, or they're not going to like me, or they're going to ignore me, or they're going to punish me. I'm afraid, right? So now you've identified some extreme issues here. You're afraid that your parents are going to bring up their political stuff and they're going to talk too much, and you're afraid to speak up to them. Now that you have these issues identified, you can actually start to take down your anxiety by attacking these issues, these violations of the self. As you're perceiving something's going to violate what you believe in, that is what's causing the anxiety. So you're going to attack the issues by actually arguing with that thought so that you can regulate it into where it's supposed to be, or analyzing what you can do about that situation. So in this situation, I may say, well, I need to talk to them and tell them I don't want them to talk too much and to talk about their political stuff. But you're thinking, man, a confrontation with my parents, they're crazy. I can't do that. Not in my culture, not in my household, not with these parents, right? And so you've got these extreme fears. So that's where you come down to that next one. I'm afraid. And why am I afraid? I'm afraid because they're going to disown me. Okay, now fight it. Fight that extreme belief, that extreme fear. Fight it. Using what? You got to use logic. You got to use scientific facts. You got to use reasoning. What's reasonable? So if a client were to say to me, well, I don't want to talk to my parents because they'll disown me, I would say, well, what if they do disown you? So what? Because I have to get them to the point of realizing I need to be brave enough to talk to my parents. As soon as you're brave enough to talk to your parents, anxiety is gone. Or if you're willing to accept them talking about their political things, but that's a violation of self, so that's not going to work. So the only way that this anxiety is going to be gone is if you solve this issue of being too afraid to speak up. As soon as you speak up to your parents, you're going to have the initial small anxiety of speaking up to them, but then after that, you're going to be good. So often you'll see that correlation between being too nice and having anxiety. So when you get rid of trying to be so nice and you just say what's on your mind to people, all of a sudden you're living a life with less anxiety. You're living a life that's actually more content, more happy. So once you identify that, you're going in and you're fighting it. How? You're using logic, using scientific fact, using reasoning points. So now you're attacking this. Hey, should a grown-up really feel afraid to talk to their parents? No. So you write that down. A grown-up should not feel afraid to talk to their parents. If a parent disowns me, is that really so bad? Well, yeah, it's the worst thing in the world to me. Why? Well, because, my parents are all I have. That seems a little extreme. My parents are all I have? Don't you have a girlfriend? Don't you have this? Don't you have that? Yeah, so now you're realizing these things they're extreme childish thinking. My parents are not all I have. Let's update this. I have a lot of things. If my parents want to disown me, that's their loss. Right? Now you're getting all these little points, and then you convert yourself. And the conversion process is very important. And you'll see me with the clients, making sure that I've converted them to the new way of thinking by asking them, do you believe in this or do you believe in that old thinking? Do you believe this 100%? Do you accept this? In that moment that they accept this, it'll trigger the release of the proper chemicals. They'll no longer get cortisol, adrenaline. They're going to get serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, all the good stuff. It's just like that. So you have to go in, identify what are the thoughts that are extreme, that are making me feel afraid, or in a case of depression, that are making me feel sad, powerless. And then identify by going deep and asking myself, why is that so important? Why is it so important to me? Why do I feel that way, though? Why don't I do this? And you're going deeper until you find out at the core what the base is. Oh, I feel unlovable. I feel whatever. And you have to identify what the extreme thoughts are. So just to give you a little bit of help with finding those extreme thoughts, here's some examples. Anytime you're saying something about shoulds and shouldn'ts, that's like making rules. Well, I'm upset because people shouldn't bump me in the hallway. People shouldn't look at me weird. You're making up rules. Well, mom and a son should have a good relationship. You're making up rules. That you're creating the anxiety by creating a rule that doesn't exist. So that's what you have to fight. Once you identify there's a should, and you realize you're making up rules, that is extreme thinking. It doesn't seem like it, but it is. It's a form of extreme thinking. A moderate thinker doesn't create shoulds. A moderate thinker, and where you'll be when you're in moderate thinking, sits back and says, it is what it is, right? It is this, it is that, and I have to accept things that I can't control, right? And so that's another thing. When you're obsessing over something you can't control, that's extreme thinking. So try to pay attention. Am I obsessing over something I can't control? That's an example of extreme thinking. Another example of extreme thinking is believing that you have the powers of a god. You can predict the future. So you might say ever, never, always. This person always does this or will never do this or they're going to do that. If I talk to them, they're going to get mad. They're going to do this. It's all this fear about the future, but you're predicting the future. You can't predict the future. Or you can read minds. You have the power to read minds. So you're like, well, they're going to think I'm bad. Or they're going to think I'm ugly. Or they think I'm stupid. Or they don't talk to me because they think and they feel. You can't read people's hearts. You don't know how they feel. You can't read people's minds. You don't know what they're thinking. That is extreme thinking, right? So now you're getting to identify these extremes and where you can start to see, okay, when you give someone else the powers of being a god, that is extreme thinking, right? So you're saying, I feel like crap because they treat me like crap. So however they treat you is what you are? they're your God now? That's extreme thinking. No, how a person treats you is not who you are. It doesn't determine your worth and your value. People get mistreated, but that's not because they're less valuable. People get mistreated because the people who mistreat them are the ones with the problem. When you were mistreated in childhood, it's not because you had less value. It's because the people who mistreated you had issues and they were dealing with them improperly. So hopefully this little powwow we've had here has helped you to be able to identify where your extreme thoughts are. So if you're experiencing right now depression, anxiety, or if you want to be ready to be able to deal with it in the future, just remember jot, journaling organizes thoughts, write it down, put the line in the middle. Left-hand column, all those subconscious scary thoughts that you're afraid to articulate, put them down. Go deep. Figure out what you're really thinking. Why is it so important? And once you identify the extreme thought, start fighting it on the right-hand side until you have the upgraded beliefs, until you're thinking in your adult mind and you're analyzing things by being ethical, powerful, intelligent, compassionate, your best self, your epic self.